Hi guys, it's Rob from Royal Balls. Yes, I've shifted the camera around so that we can get a look at the terrarium here in its new location, and I have an update for you on this terrarium experiment. This one is actually quite radical. The reason that it's taken such a long time for me to make this video is that each time I mess with the snake, I have to let it settle and see whether it settles into a regular pattern of behaviour before I change something and see whether that affects the behaviour. So every time I make a change, it does take a day or two in order for the snake to settle down so that I can see that it has resumed its normal behaviour before we mess with it some more. So where we left it last time is I had moved the snake from its location over here where it was extremely unsettled, and I put it in this blue tub down here, and I have some footage in the tub. It did settle down almost immediately, but I got some in-tub footage which actually caused a little bit of a surprise for me, so we'll take a look at that. But he did settle down and appeared to be quite content in his tub, so I moved him again. I moved him back into the terrarium. Okay, so this little guy has been in the tub nice and settled for over a week now, and he's actually shed. I don't know whether that's significant or not as part of the move out of the terrarium and across the room, but he's shed anyway. I was going to keep him in the tub for one shed cycle and then put him back into the terrarium in the terrarium's new location and see how he does. But just as a casual observation, the move to the tub has been absolutely awesome. He's settled back down again. He's not restless. He's doing well again. I think I might feed him one time in the tub first before we put him back into the terrarium, because he didn't eat last week, presumably because he was going into shed. So we'll feed him tonight and move him into the terrarium in the next day or two and see what happens. But there he is, looking fantastic, and yes, he has been very settled in the tub. Very difficult to get into the mind of a snake, but as a casual observation, I would say he's much happier in the tub than he is in the terrarium. He seems to like it better, he's more settled and more relaxed. Okay, so I put the camera into the tub. It's about 6 o'clock in the evening, and he didn't like it. We've seen this reaction before, particularly from the males. They do not like the intrusion into their tubs, and they're very aware of the camera. So I took the opportunity to feed this guy in his tub before we put him back into the terrarium. So there is a live feeding about to come up, guys, so if you do not like to see live feedings, you can skip ahead a little bit. Here he is checking out the camera again. It's obvious he is very aware of the camera and doesn't like it. He settled back down again now. There is no scent of prey in the room. I will feed when it gets dark, which is about 7:30. So here we are, 7 o'clock, and I put an African soft fur into his tub, which he is immediately aware of. This is speeded up ×2, guys, so no hesitation whatsoever. But what he does next is quite surprising. A very strong feeding response from him there, but after he's constricted and killed the prey, his attention becomes focused on the camera again, and he actually attacks the camera. Now, you could say that this is a feeding response and he's confused because the camera has a heat signature, but it doesn't look like it to me. He's already killed his prey and he wants the camera gone. He wants some privacy. He's being very territorial. you'll see he actually strikes at the camera but makes no attempt to actually coil it, and he does it multiple times. Very territorial, very aggressive towards the camera. We've seen this behavior in males before. Females seem to react in a much more calm, passive manner to the camera. The male's much more aggressive. There you go, he struck the camera there. Don't think that was a feeding response. He's already killed his prey there and he knows it's there. He's trying to make the camera go away. You'll see that he actually does it again. So I'm suggesting here that this guy's being very territorial with the camera and he wants to make it go away. There he goes again, striking at the camera. That is not a feeding response. That is aggression. Because the camera does not go away, so that he can eat in peace, watch what he does with his meal. Okay, if the camera won't go away, I'm out of here and I'm taking my rat with me so I can eat it in peace. So I'm seeing actually quite a territorial response from this male snake, even though he has settled down quite nicely in his tub and is not being restless. He does not like the intrusion of the camera. Okay, so this guy was fed a couple of days ago. He's been very settled here in the tub, but I'm going to put him back in the terrarium. What I think is happening here is this guy has reached sexual maturity. There are females in the room, breeder females, pumping out pheromones, which gets the males switched on, gets them into the mood for breeding. But as the males get into the mood for breeding, they become very territorial and very aggressive with each other. And I think it's not so much the presence of females, other than to kick off that testosterone boost. It's the presence of other males that these guys do not like to be too close to. So let's put him back in the terrarium for tonight. I'm going to leave the terrarium exactly the same as it was when we originally set it up, so he should be familiar with it. And I'm going to put this hide and the water bowl into the terrarium, along with his label, of course. So let's do that. So we put his label back on the terrarium there. We put his water bowl back into the terrarium exactly where it was, and the hide is going to go here. So let's just lift the hide. He's going to get spooked when I lift it. There he is, sitting pretty. So we'll put the hide back in, facing backwards, because we want him to have to work for his food here. So there we go. Those are the two entrances to the underground system. And we're going to pop him back into the terrarium right now. So here he goes. Come on, dude. You're going back into this terrarium. There you go. Let's put you in there. Close this up. And I will put the camera on him tonight, the spy cam, to see what he does. But let's just see where he goes initially. So he didn't immediately bolt down into the underground tunnel. So we'll leave him there, and I'll turn the lights off, and we'll come back in a little while and see how he's doing. There we go. We didn't have to wait too long, guys. He's gone straight back down into the underground tunnel. There he goes. That was his normal routine, his normal behaviour when he was in the terrarium next to the other males. Let's see how he behaves now the terrarium's moved. So there he goes, down into the underground system. Business as usual. And I had to wait and see whether he settled back into his normal routine. We're going to take a look at some footage that shows that yes, he did. So here he is back in the terrarium, and he quickly established that routine of setting up ambush in the entrance to the underground system and spending the day underground. I would like to show you some spy cam footage of what happened during the night, but nothing did, so I didn't actually record any footage. He sets up ambush for a couple of hours on an evening, and in the morning when I come down, he's fast asleep again, and the camera does not record any movement at all during the night. So this guy has gone back to his normal diurnal routine, and he's active for a couple of hours in the early evening and a couple of hours in the early morning. He is not active all night long. So yes, he settled immediately back into the normal routine that we're familiar with for the first 9 months of this guy being in the terrarium. He resumed the behaviour that we saw for the first 9 months, primarily living underground, setting up an ambush each evening in the entrance to the burrow system, but not actually moving around a great deal. Now, one thing that's become obvious during the making of all these videos is that our ball pythons are not actually active all night long. They sleep all day, but they do not remain active all night. They're active for brief periods, usually first thing after dark for a couple of hours and first thing on a morning before dawn are the periods I've noticed the most activity in all of my snakes when we've been shooting the spy cam video of them. So bear that in mind when you watch these videos. And what I've done for this guy here, when he settled into the terrarium, I thought, what can I do to give us some indication of what it was that disturbed him over there and caused him to change his behaviour. So over the last couple of weeks I've been saving up sheds from mature snakes. In this bag here I have 2 breeder female sheds, and in this bag here I've got 3 breeder male sheds. And one of the reasons it's taken so long to do this video is I wanted this guy to settle, and I put female sheds just on the top of the roof here where the terrarium has a mesh roof so it lets in the scent, and I put the female sheds on the top here and left it for a night to see how he responded to the sheds and him being able to smell females. And yes, he did respond. We'll take a look at that video. I then let him settle back down again into his normal routine, and each time I do this I have to check and make sure that he resumes his normal underground sleeping, and on an evening coming out to the entrance of the tunnel to set up ambush, which is what he's done for the first 9 months that we followed this guy. So here we are with the sheds set up on top of the terrarium, and it's only 5 o'clock in the evening, and I've set up the spy cam, and you can see that he's nowhere in sight. And in fact we had to wait until midnight before the camera picked up any activity. And here he is, right at the front of the cage, reaching up towards where those sheds are. This is not the same frantic movement that we noticed before. This is actually very measured, very slow, and he doesn't appear to be too disturbed by it. He's just checking it out. Once he's checked it out, he's only active for about an hour, and it's unusual to see him out at this time of night anyway, but he checks it out for about an hour, and then he goes back underground. He doesn't move for the rest of the night. So yes, he checked out the scent from the female sheds, but did it disturb him too much? Not really. So here again, I would like to show you footage of what happened afterwards, but he resumed his normal routine. There he is, setting up ambush on an evening, and it didn't stress him out at all. He went straight back to his normal routine. So once he settled back into his normal routine, I messed with him some more. I took male sheds, and this is what we suspected caused that unsettled behaviour in this guy. It was the scent of other males that he didn't like now that he's reached sexual maturity. So what I did was to put male sheds on the top of the terrarium here, and I also stuck one down at the bottom here because there is vent holes down here that allow scent in. So I put the male sheds into a position where he could smell them in the terrarium. And let's take a look at how he responds to the scent of other males in proximity to his territory. So here we are with the spy cam set up at 7:30 at night, and you can see the sheds, the male sheds now on top of the terrarium, and there he is. He's out at 9 o'clock at night. I just come in to check. He isn't moving around frantically. He's sitting on top of the log, which is unusual in itself. And I'm just doing some nightly checks on some other snakes that I have paired up. But I took the opportunity to take a photograph of this guy because it is unusual to see him out. And I'm adjusting the spy cam to get a slightly closer view so that we don't miss any action for the coming night. So there he is on top of the log, and actually the disturbance of me coming in the room makes him go back underground. He doesn't stay out for very long. He goes back underground. And we have to wait until again after midnight. And here he comes again, but this time you will see that he's active for much longer, and he's much more frantic over what he's doing. This video is speeded up by ×2, but you'll see that after checking out the male sheds like he did with the female, he then starts to wander all over the tub quite restlessly, climbing all over the place just like he did before. So very aware of the scent of other snakes, both female and male, around him. But his response here is much more dramatic to the male sheds than it is to the female sheds. And this behavior is much more erratic. It's much more like the behavior that we saw for those first 2 days when he was very unsettled in the old location and we had to move him. You can see the timestamp in the top left, so you'll see that he is actually active for much longer than he was with the female sheds. With the female sheds, he checked it out and went back to sleep, went back underground. And we'll see his response to the male sheds, even when he's finished checking it out, is quite different. So here he is pushing and probing now, which he didn't with the female sheds. He's back to actually trying to find a way out. The timestamp has changed here, so again he's being active for much longer than he was with the female sheds, and his behavior is now all over the place. He's actually getting quite frantic. You'll notice now that he's at the back of the terrarium, which he didn't do with the female sheds. The female sheds he just checked out, which are at the front of the tub. He checked out the front of the tub and then went back underground. Now he's actually all over the place. So the fact that I got much more footage of him during the time that the male sheds were there versus the female sheds is also quite indicative of his response. Much more dramatic response to the male sheds than the female sheds. And here he is again, probing up the back of the terrarium, trying to get out. Again, this video is speeded up 2 times. Here he is, 2 o'clock in the morning, still going strong. He's been at it for 2 hours. Again, very difficult to get into the mind of a snake, but when I watch this footage, there is quite a difference between his response to the female sheds and the male sheds. And I would say, reviewing this footage, again, you guys be the judge, but this snake is not happy. You can see the timestamp on the top left. It is now 2:10 in the morning, and this guy is still frantic. This matches perfectly his response to the camera. Very territorial and very aggressive towards anything intruding into his space. Females? No problem. Males? No. Okay, getting on for 3 o'clock in the morning. He's been at this for nearly 3 hours now, still going strong. This footage actually surprised me at how clear his response was. I did not expect to see anything quite so dramatically different or quite so clear in terms of him not liking the scents that he can detect around him. Here is the exact same footage speeded up to ×20 so that you guys can compare this behavior with the behavior that I filmed for those 2 days when the terrarium was in its original location. So comparing the same speed, you can see the erratic nature of the movement much more clearly and compare that to the way that he behaved in the terrarium for those 2 days before I moved him, before the start of this whole experiment thing. Very erratic movement. Now, of course, this is not conclusive, guys, but it would seem pretty clear cut to me. This guy went absolutely berserk when he could scent other males. And the odd thing about it is that 2 nights later, he still has not settled back into his normal routine, even though I have removed the sheds. The presence of the male sheds seems to have unsettled this guy no end. He was out last night. Very briefly, not all night long, but very briefly he was out, and he was inspecting the roof of the terrarium again. We've seen that behaviour before he retired for the rest of the night, but he didn't retire underground. Again, we've seen that shift in behaviour. Instead of going underground, he's now in this hide on the surface. He has not gone back underground, and I don't know the reason for that. Maybe he doesn't want to get trapped underground in a tight tunnel with no room to escape when there are other males in the vicinity.
So here he is, the first night after I removed the sheds, and as soon as I disturbed him he went back underground, but you can see that he still is quite unsettled. The spy cam did not catch much activity, but you'll see on the video the vegetation in the bottom left moves. There.
I don't know, I'm speculating, but I suspect that I'm going to have to move this guy out of the terrarium and put him back into this tub down here in order to get him to settle down again. He seems to be very disturbed by the scent of other males, whereas the scent of other females didn't appear to bother him that much. So in some regards, I think we've been getting this the wrong way round, guys. When our breeder males get unsettled and they go off food, we move them away from the females. This guy has shown you he doesn't really bother too much about the females. He likes females. It's the males that he doesn't like. When other males are in the vicinity and they are also breeder males, this behaviour may be unique to the breeding season. It may be unique to breeders. It may be unique to people that have a collection of snakes that see this behaviour for part of the year, but not all of the year. And the males are the ones that do all of this stuff, and it's the males that don't like the other males. That makes perfect sense to me. These guys get very territorial and they get quite aggressive towards each other during the breeding season. And this guy has demonstrated this quite nicely. So in order to get him to settle back down again, we're probably going to have to move him again. I don't need to move him far. I'll probably just move him back into this tub down here. I think that will do the trick. But if I have to do that, I'm not short of ideas on how to continue this terrarium experiment, because it's been absolutely fascinating. But one thing that I might try is, if this guy has to go back into a tub, we'll leave him in the tub because he seems to be more settled there. I'll put a juvenile female into the terrarium. Let's have a look at a female and see how a female behaves. I won't mess with her too much initially. We'll let her settle down until she shows us that she's experiencing some behaviour change, how she responds to that. And I may actually, if I put the female into this terrarium, I may actually move the terrarium back over to its original spot so that we can compare like for like.
So I want to put this behaviour into context again. This is some free roaming video. This is a male, and I stress again, primarily males like to do this. So if you're in any doubt at all over how sensitive these males are to the scent of other snakes, I put this footage in here just so that we can review. When he does a wide area search, he uses very long tongue flicks, often sticks his head right up into the air. When he's doing his detailed search, he gets his head really close to the surface and does those really short tongue flicks, very concentrated. And you can see him checking out every nook and cranny of this paper rack that I've used before. There can be no doubt that this guy is sensing other snakes that have used this rack. I stress again, this is primarily males that engage in this behaviour. The females, not so much. There's that concentrated search. His tongue is actually touching the surface. He's picking up the minutest scent. And what he's doing here is building a picture of the other snakes that are around in his environment. Now he switches to an area search. This is when he's detecting what else is about in the room, and then he goes back to focusing on the paper rack. So this helps to put the behavior of the terrarium snake into the context of what these snakes are actually doing when they're moving around and checking out scent. This footage is also speeded up 2 times, so it does look a little bit fast. But again, there can be absolutely no doubt that this snake is checking out in minute detail the scents that are available on this paper rack. You can see the distinct difference between the area search or the wide area scan and the more detailed search when he's focused in on some scent of particular interest. I find it fascinating the way that they actually cant their heads over at an angle just to get a better perspective on the scents. Now, I do think that allowing your male snakes to do this when they become a little bit restless, I've noticed that after a free roaming session where they do get chance to check out the scent from other snakes, when you put them back into their tub, they seem to settle down much quicker than if you don't let them out. I think this activity is good for them. It allows them to build up a picture of what else is going on in their environment within the snake room, and it allows them to build up a picture of what else is out there. I guess who their competition is. Not 10 minutes later, if you're in any doubt at all, here is a second snake, another male, another breeder male. 10 minutes after that first snake has been put away, here he is checking out the scent on the paper rack, and he's behaving exactly the same way. He's using that micro scan, those very short concentrated tongue flicks, and every once in a while he does a wide area scan where he sticks his head up and uses those much longer tongue flicks to assess what's going on in the wider environment. But these snakes are absolutely fascinated by the scent of this paper rack. And it's not only the paper rack. Here I am continuing to clean while this guy goes about his free roaming, and I put a tub from a breeder female that I'm about to clean on the table, and he immediately gets straight into the tub. You can see the shed there. He's checking out in minute detail, and look at his tail. His tail is actually in the air. I've seen this behavior when you pair snakes up. The male snake sometimes wags his tail in the air. He's doing exactly the same thing in this mature female's dirty tub. He didn't hesitate to dive in her tub the moment it went onto the table where he was free roaming, and you can see he's checking it out in minute detail. This is fascinating behavior. Sorry guys, the tub is dirty. This female just shed. But he finds the scents very attractive. And finally, guys, it did take about 2 days, but the terrarium guy has finally settled back to his normal routine. Here he is in his normal ambush routine. It took a while, but he did settle.
So that's it, guys. It's quite complicated, this one. It's taken a lot of time and effort to get this video, but I think the results have been very worthwhile. You guys be the judge. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.